Coming up next is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. This week, Ryan and I look at Radeon's new 6800 series GPUs, a $250 PC build that's actually worth upgrading to, and the MacBook Air has a hard drive upgrade? Coming up next on This Week in Computer Hardware.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twitch.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 93, recorded October 28th, 2010. A solid $250 PC build.
This episode of Twitch is brought to you by Carbonite Pro. With prices starting at just $10 a month, all of your Office PCs can be backed up safely and automatically. For a free trial and to learn more, visit CarbonitePro.com.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton, joined as always by the man, the myth, the legend. Ryan, are you there, sir?
I am here. We are here. We are ready to talk about computer hardware yet again this week. This time we've got some interesting things to discuss, as well as our usual array of emails and questions.
Has the Woot Monkey always been hanging over your monitor? And also, congratulations at finally making it home after like 2 months of travel.
It is nice. It is nice. Unfortunately, I'll be gone again next week. But it is nice to be home. I think I've been home for like almost a week now. Right at that range. It's been a while. September and October were kind of messed up. As for the Woot Monkey behind me, if you're watching the video version, yeah, he's always around somewhere. The guys and gals in the chat room like me to kind of rearrange him and move him, make it a little bit mystery. Sometimes he's sitting on the laptop, but that doesn't really show up in the video anymore. But yeah, he's always there. And actually, it's kind of depressing now because the batteries died. And I mean, he doesn't
so it's no
anymore.
longer a screaming Woot Monkey.
Yes, now it's just it's a silent Woot Monkey. It's a different breed.
Yeah, if you haven't heard the Woot Monkey scream, you probably have a much quieter office than Ryan or I do.
I mean, it's got the elastic arms and fling him across it. Well, that's always fun. Just
don't fling it at anybody's face, because somebody popped me in the face with a Woot Monkey, and it is painful.
Yeah,
to say the least. Not painful, AMD's Radeon HD 6870 and 6850, the Bart's architecture refresh. Mm-hmm. I happy, not happy. This is the new fastest board ever. No, maybe.
No. It's not. It's not. Their goal was not that, right? So we showed off the cards and we talked a little bit about like the design of the card, but we couldn't really talk about performance last week because of the timing and the embargoes and all that kind of stuff. But the cards are officially launched. They're available if you go to Newegg or Amazon or Tiger Direct, or I assume Fry's and Micro Center and those types of places as well. They should all have new Radeon HD 6870s and 6850s in stock. They're not the fastest cards in the world, but they're not meant to be. The MSRP on the Radeon HD 6870, we've got one here from XFX and one here from Sapphire, is $230. So it's kind of in that mid-range area. And then the Radeon HD 6850, this is an XFX model. This starts at about $169 to $179. So they're kind of in that...
or the Patrick Norton range. I can afford these cards.
Yeah, everybody likes it when that's what happens. You know, the naming was kind of weird because I think most people assumed, like you did, when you hear 6870 and 6850, you think these are going to be the new type enthusiast class graphics cards, and they just I know why they did it. So they changed it around this way because the 6870 and the 6850 are very, very similar architecturally to the 5870 and the 5800 series of cards. They're based off of that same kind of GPU with some tweaks here, changes the memory controller, changes the shader count, increase in raster operators, and rebalancing some things. But essentially, they are a very, very similar architecture. And so that architectural similarity, I guess, is kind of what they wanted to signify with the naming scheme. Now, they are going to come out still before the end of the year, a 6900 series of cards that is based on a new architecture, and that will be the high-end product. And I guess what they kind of wanted to avoid was creating a 6870 and have that be a completely new architecture, and then have the 6700 series be the previous generation architecture. So they're trying to create like a new plateau, a new level naming scheme, as opposed to using existing ones. Still kind of confusing, but that's the thinking behind it.
Solid performance.
Yeah, actually pretty good performance. You know, I know we talked about on this show the GTX 460 a lot. That graphics card kind of came out of nowhere from NVIDIA and really kind of wiped the floor with any of the AMD options at that price point. And this is the answer to those cards. The GTX 460 was selling tons. I mean, they were selling them as fast as they could make them almost. And these address those performance markets and those pricing segments pretty much head on. You know, depending on whose reviews you're reading and what games you're talking about and all that kind of stuff, the 6870 is pretty comparable to like an overclocked GTX 460. And then the 6850 is kind of comparable to like your base GTX 460 1 gig or your GTX 460 768 meg. So, I mean, performance-wise, nothing revolutionary in terms of performance. It's just you get those AMD feature sets. You get DX11. You get up to 3 displays on this card. Actually, you get up to 4 displays right out of the bat with this card, because you can use 2 DVI ports and 2 mini display ports on the card. So you can actually have 4 displays hooked up to even the lower end 6850 cards. So that's kind of nice. What I think is actually just as interesting is what NVIDIA's response was to these cards. You know, they always play this little cat and mouse game of who's going to release information first and who's going to answer. And NVIDIA, basically what they did was they took the GTX 460 prices and cut them pretty significantly, $30 to $40, depending on the different models. So, you know, if you're a GTX 460 owner already and you were kind of debating that whole SLI thing, you know, even if you have no interest in these Radeon 6800 cards, you're like, hey, now I can buy that second 60. It's going to be cheaper. So that's why competition's good, right? You know, AMD and NVIDIA really don't like it. Consumers and us on the show and everybody who listens and watches us should like it. Lower prices are always a plus.
I don't know if the price is lower, but competition somewhere I did not expect. I am officially... I am shocked and amazed. There is a drive upgrade for the MacBook Air already, the new generation MacBook Air. We don't know what it will cost. We don't know if it'll ever be available in the United States unless you have a friend in Japan. But PhotoFast, the GM2 SFV1 Air upgrade kit for the new MacBook Air, which is it's essentially they're promising an SSD upgrade for the Macs. 256 gigabytes will fit in the 11.6 MacBook Air, and it comes with a USB 3.0 adapter. I was not expecting this. I am pleasantly shocked.
So you have a MacBook Air now, or your wife does. Somebody in the family does.
My wife has them. The MacBook Air showed up Tuesday this week. I got to say, as somebody who uses... You know, as somebody who's used a lot of notebooks over the last 15 years, 18 years, 20 years, oh my goodness. This is a really solid piece of engineering. A lot of people are like, it's ridiculously priced for what it is. And, well, yeah, is there a Mac tax? To a certain degree, yes, but you know, you're talking about CNC milled, cased, phenomenally thick, pretty surprisingly good battery life. No, you know, a nice rigid structure. The hardware feels really good in the hand. An outstanding keyboard. I've never really dealt with a one or two significantly more expensive notebooks in this, you know, that are this thin that actually had the keyboard feels fantastic. I'm kind of a serious keyboard nerd because I type for a living.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
Solid piece of engineering, a really solid piece of engineering.
Did you get the 11 or the 13?
Did get the 13.
Okay. That's the one I was leaning towards if I was going to get one.
11-inch notebooks are nice if you spend a lot of time either with the notebook or with the notebook connected to a monitor, but I hate spending, 8 hours a day connected to an 11-inch monitor. It's a little small for my taste. The decent graphics performance, and unlike my wife's Core Duo MacBook, you can't hear the fans howling as it struggles to keep up with flash advertising in web pages, which is, that alone I think was probably worth upgrading the notebook to anything more modern. But actually it's turned out to be a really nice piece of hardware, super light, super thin. It's one thing to sort of see the numbers and see the giant picture on the screen behind Steve Jobs, but actually have it in your hand and be like, this is ridiculous. It's like at one end, it's less than 2 CD cases thick.
That's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. Good looking. I mean, it's a good looking piece of hardware. The screen looks really good too. But yeah, I was really. I'm trying to decide if I'm kind of like the top of the photofast.taiwan page. Distributor wanted outside of Japan region. So
we've dealt with PhotoFast before. They sell things in the U.S. So it kind of confuses me that maybe why they're having problems getting distribution for this particular part. But it's one of those things that I think the amount of excitement that people see about this, because I mean, the reason this is interesting is that nobody really thought you'd be able to upgrade this, right? When iFixit started to tear down the the MacBook Air, they showed the SSD with this very, very proprietary form factor, but it turns out it's not a proprietary connection. It's really SATA data and power leads in a kind of moved around and to fit into a form factor that Apple wanted to create. And so they were able to, at least in theory, make up an updated version for this. So if you bought the 64 gig version and you wanted to upgrade for the 256, you can't do that through Apple even if you take it into the Apple stores or whatever, that you'll be able to do this yourself. I don't know how easy it is to get inside a MacBook Air. The iFixit guys didn't seem to have too much of a problem, but I always hate getting into things like that.
I love iFixit because they make, for absolutely nothing, they make all the instructions to do DIY hardware repair, which in notebooks usually means hardware replacement, and for that matter, iPods and iPhones. The new MacBook Air is certainly easier to get into than say an iPhone 3G or 3GS or 4, but you're going to need to buy a set of security bits to do it, and it's actually, I would say, probably a lot easier than the iPhones. But you're going to need to go to your local hardware store or whatever the nearest big hardware store is, or up to Amazon to buy a set of security bits to get the sort of 5-point Torx drivers and some of the stuff they've done internally. But yeah, interesting product. Also interesting, you noted, I was reading on PCMag.com earlier today about the $188 tablet, and you found up on Engadget.com, Walgreens is going to be selling a $100 tablet.
Yeah, it's a $100 Maylong M150 Android tablet. Nobody knows a whole lot about it yet, other than it's $100. It's using a VIA VM8505 Plus processor. It's got built-in Wi-Fi, an unspecified amount of built-in flash memory, a micro SD card slot for expansion. There's a video of it on the Engadget website, and to me, this is, I had a conversation with somebody that was in town and that lives in Taiwan, and they were talking about going over to China a lot. And some of the interesting things you can do in the tech marts in China are build your own cell phone. You've got this big, huge venue, and you can pick out this case and this screen and this speaker and this, this motherboard with processor and that kind of stuff on it. And you can really build it all right there. Somebody puts it together for you, and you've got a Nexus 1 clone or an iPhone clone or, whatever. And they pop the latest version of the open source Android OS on it, and away you go. And they also said they're doing the same thing with tablets. And that's kind of what you've got here. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence. It looks an awful lot like an iPad in its picture, right? It's even got the circular button with the square type logo on it, right? And this is running, I think it's running like Android maybe 2.0, hopefully not 1.6 or anything like that. You have to hack your way in to get access to the Android market, or you can download applications third-party wise and install them that way. And apparently this is just really, really common to get these super cheap tablet computers all over China and Taiwan. And this is not the first one we've really seen like this. I think Kmart was selling one. We talked about a couple of months ago, and now Walgreens is going to have their own. And you're seeing all these different companies just create their own little cheesy brand. And I think when you're talking about $100 device, that's almost kind of like throwaway money. I hate to say it like that, but it's just like this is something where somebody's mom might buy it for their kid for Christmas just because it's a tablet and it's only $100, and they're like, well, it's way less expensive than a $700 or $600 iPad, So I think it could be really cool. I worry about it flooding the market, but I don't know. What do you have any thoughts on the floating around of $100 tablets.
We played around. Veronica was playing around with an ebook, the name of which I can't remember, which is essentially an Android tablet pretending to be an ebook. And I'm desperate to I don't want to like sit here scrolling to try to find the name, because it was around $200. One of the worst user experiences Veronica's ever had, and one of the ugliest user experiences I've seen in a long time, because it was Android, which is good. I believe I'm almost positive it was Android, but the CPU was so slow compared to the operating system it was trying to push around. It was abysmal. Like hitting the button to turn the page and sort of being able to count to 5 before the page turns. And the photo rendering was pathetic, and the web browsing wasn't too hot. So it's interesting. Like the Cherry tablet or the Cherry Pad from the Cherry Pal folks, it's an Android tablet with an 800 megahertz processor, 2 gigabytes of internal memory. The Maylong M150 is like a 400 megahertz VIA processor with their 8505. And I'm really curious, like, I'm happy that these, because you think about all of the products, like you see a lot of, you go to the drugstore at 4 a.m, you can buy a USB thumb drive, you can buy a set of headphones to get you through the night, or because you absolutely positively have to have something to listen to music on the plane. But a lot of the gadgets kind of above that level start to get really low rent, in not in sort of a cheap way, but in a sort of like, wow, this is cheap, but the user experience is miserable. And in the worst case scenarios, it's like the Super Action Video Game Plus, except that it's got like 3 games. They poured it over from some Japanese game company that went down in 1988. They promised more at the store, and there's like a checkers game and nothing else. So I love that these guys are using Android for these cheap ones. But I'm a little concerned that people are going to buy this and it's going to be this really super painful, slow tablet. So I'll be really curious to see what people think about when they start finding these in the wild and start reviewing them. But man, you got to love that price, $100. I mean, that's
it's almost like one of those things where it's like, I just kind of want to try it, right? But let's see, like maybe it's not as awful as that one that Veronica tried out.
I can only hope.
Maybe it is. But they're sold out. If you go to Walgreens.com, you can search for it. I just looked while we were talking about it, and the next shipping date for it is November 18th. So I don't know how many they got in, but they apparently have sold through the majority of them. So that says something, if nothing else, about how eager people are to just buy tablets for really cheap. I'm sure most of that is geek community, not exactly holiday retail sales. So
I'm sure that Steve Jobs is horrified, and Apple's lawyers are already figuring out how to sue for emulating the button. I'll bet money on that, but I was ready to bet money that nobody but Apple would offer a hard drive upgrade for the MacBook Air. So I wouldn't follow my prognostications. Something you can rely on: Carbonite Pro. Ryan, you want to tell everybody about our sponsor today?
Yeah, so before we get into emails from viewers, listeners, whatever we want to call them, I guess, let's talk about Carbonite Pro. Business PCs, if you work in a small office or even a large office, really, for that matter, their PCs are crashing all the time. These days, it's mostly because of hard drive failures, viruses, and spamware, especially if some of your employees might be less selective about what they download on their PCs than others. Be sure to keep your PC and businesses up and running, even if your computers aren't, with Carbonite Pro. Now, Carbonite Pro backs up all of your PCs in the business automatically whenever they are connected to the internet. It's safe. Your files are encrypted before they leave your computer for maximum security. It's easy to use whether you're a computer novice or a full-fledged tech guy. It's pretty much automatic once you get the software installed on their computer. Backs up your files automatically whenever. It's affordable. Prices start at just $10 a month, and you really just pay for the amount of storage you need, not how many users you have. So if your entire company is only using 10 gigs or 20 gigs of storage, that's all you're going to pay for, no matter the number of employees you actually have. It's one account with one monthly bill, so it makes it easy from a management standpoint. Carbonite Pro gives you a centralized dashboard to give you or your administrator a backup status summary of all the computers in your business, so you can see if there's been a delay and one of the computers hasn't been online in a while in terms of getting backed up. You can check on all that. Now, if there ever is a data loss problem, each employee can access their backup files themselves. You can be notified, and your office can be back up and running with no headaches or time lost. And because your files are backed up off-site, Each person can access their own files from any computer or even their iPhone or BlackBerry with Carbonite's free applications. All this means you can focus on growing your business and leave the backup to Carbonite Pro. Now, if you want to try this out, all you have to do is go to carbonitepro.com. It's free for 30 days. Again, prices start at just $10 a month. No special promo codes or anything like that. All you have to do to give it a try is carbonitepro.com, and we thank them for the support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
Woohoo!
Indeed. So let's jump into some emails.
Andrew, using the onboard sound, what is the best gaming headset? I don't need a Nike. I don't need a mic, but it would be nice. The really cool thing about USB and standardized USB drivers, it makes it super, super easy to upgrade your audio by using, especially with gaming headsets, by using a headset that basically terminates, if I pull my USB headset out of here and hold it up. Pretend there's a USB dongle here. Right. Yeah, I will be able to speak, but you won't be able to hear me. Some of the best ones I've heard in a while would be Astro Gaming. That's a personal favorite. Astro Gaming, the A40 is kind of their super high-end one. That's $250, but I believe they have some less expensive ones on the A30 side. But Astro seems to have some really nice gear. Okay, the Astro A30 is still $130, but it's a pretty nice piece of gear. What is your? Oops, sorry.
You know, there have been a lot. The Astro A40 is another good one. There have been a lot of. It seems like there's been a rash of like high-end headphones released. I would say like in the last 6 months. Would you agree with that? It just seems like everybody's coming out with a high-end gaming headset. It's kind of like power supplies 2 years ago. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to sell and make power supplies. Case in point, Corsair is one of those companies. They jumped into power supplies. They did a good job with that. Corsair also sells the, what do they call them, the HS1 headphones. Those I tried out. I've tried out a couple times, and they're actually really, really high quality as well. I'm trying to see what their prices are on them. $99, so $100.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and they're comfortable. My biggest thing with big like ear can headphones is pressure underneath the ear, like neck, that kind of thing. Pressure there always kind of bothers me. The HS1s have like a really high quality memory foam finish on the inside of the pads. It's comfortable there. What company makes those World of Warcraft headphones? Those got a lot of interesting reviews, but I think they're really, really, really expensive.
Well, Triton comes to mind. Astro comes to mind. Did Creative Blaster? Did Creative do those?
Creative did them. Yeah. Detachable noise canceling microphone. So that's one. If he's, interested in having a mic sometimes and maybe not, it is detachable. I mean, most of the other time you can just kind of fold it up anyway. It's not that big a deal if you've got a mic and you don't need it. Looks like the
the Creative Labs, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the Creative Labs, the Sound Blaster, the World of Warcraft wireless headset with the panels that change colors. It's actually, I have a lot of issues with some of the audio effects that Creative Labs introduces with their gear. But yeah, the Creative Blaster has a pretty good one. The Triton AX Pro is pretty good. The Sound Blaster World of Warcraft wireless headset is $135. Yep. I can't remember if they have the USB headset. Actually, the USB version of that is $76 on Amazon. That's a pretty good deal. 3.5 stars, not the most popular one on Amazon, but yeah,
they change
Astro
colors depending on what faction you are in World of Warcraft.
Which, you got to admire that. Unless you don't got to admire that.
That's true.
Some people like the Razer headsets.
Yeah.
But yeah, my personal favorites right now are probably the Astro Gaming, and I'll say the Creative Labs actually sounded pretty good. I know Veronica Belmont was a big fan. She spent a bunch of time using those. She spends a lot of time playing World of Warcraft, and she was really enjoying the USB headsets from Creative Labs, the World of Warcraft one. So hopefully that's price is pretty much between $76 and several $100 for Andrew. And also, Andrew, look, you can also find an inexpensive Plantronics headset or something else like that with a USB adapter from your local office supply store, Amazon.com, and it will not be the luxurious, super surround sound, amazing giant headphone and mic experience, but it will give you the stereo audio and it will give you a decent microphone to talk to people with. So you don't have to have a gaming headset to have a gaming experience unless you're going to pony up the money for something that emulates 5.1 surround sound, which personally I think most of those don't do surround as well as you would hope for the money you're paying. I have the same feelings about sound bars too.
Yeah. Let's see. We got another email here from Melvin, who says, I'm going through a similar process to Felix with regard to replacing an old system on a tight budget. One of the systems in the house is a Dell Dimension with a 2.66 P4 and AGP graphics. Let's see. He came up with a system comprising of an Athlon X2 processor, gigabyte integrated everything motherboard, 4 gigs of memory, although it'd still be using legacy 32-bit XP, I think, a 320 gig SATA drive, Foxconn micro ATX case with an included 350 watt power supply. So actually, I think if we scroll down, I think this is, no, it might be a little bit different, but we have a very similar email to this as well. Somebody trying to build a replacement computer for as cheap as possible. So he came up with this system that was $320. He's pretty sure it will beat and blow away the old 2.6 gigahertz Pentium 4. And chances are he's probably right. If we bring up on the video, there should be a picture here from Sam about a $250 computer. We'll kind of just combine these since they're so similar. He priced out a $250 computer, right? Your goal is like that $500 computer is like the budget. He got one at $250 that is 2 gigs of DDR2 memory, an Athlon X2 2.9 gigahertz processor, a Samsung 320 gig hard drive, a Cooler Master Elite 360 case with a 350 watt power supply, an ECS 780G motherboard, kind of an all-in-one deal, as well as a Samsung DVD burner. And all this is right about $250 for that. And I'm trying to think, he's got the processor, he's got memory, he's got a motherboard with integrated graphics, a case, hard drive, and an optical drive. And the case comes with the power supply. Not usually my favorite recommendation. Cooler Master, probably a little bit more dependable than just some off-brand, so to speak. But usually getting that power supply in there with it's a little makes me hesitate a little bit. But I don't know, what are your thoughts on, this system that's kind of spec'd out here for $250, $300 is if nothing else, a really good kind of starting point?
No, I agree, and I was actually thinking I'm kind of shocked he pulled all of that together for $250, and he's doing a good job of reusing every part he can from his existing system. So I bound down to the Twitch audience. That is an awesome starting point, and I think calling it a starting point is a great thing because once you've sort of jerked your motherboard into sort of 2010 instead of 2005, you end up having a lot more processor options to upgrade to over time. You've sped up the entire system. I mean, that $250 system should be a nice kick in the seat compared to what he's been using in terms of the 266 Pentium 4. Because I remember, one of the big deals about the Pentium 4 and notebooks will be able to play DVDs without an additional acceleration card, and and now we like DVD, decoding is a joke, right? It's like, can it decode 1080p H.264 encoded video? Which is a non-trivial thing if you don't have graphics acceleration. I think it's a great upgrade. Plus, he'll have the opportunity to be he's got PCI Express, so he can advance he can upgrade the graphics if he wants to start getting into gamings again. I'm impressed. Even the $250, $300 upgrade. Recycling parts, that's smart. I do it all the time. You do it all the time. The thing is,
I don't even think he's recycling parts here. I mean, he's got case, power supply, hard drive, motherboard.
I'm sort of thinking Melvin's recycling some parts from his old system. Yeah. Sorry. The other email.
But it's for those people who say that building your own computer isn't any cheaper than getting something from Dell or Gateway and that type of thing. This kind of proves that it can be.
Neither of these guys are. Are they purchasing the operating system, and are they purchasing a monitor?
No and no. Neither of these list those as acquired items, so to speak. So if you're reusing a monitor, let's say most people are reusing a monitor.
Right.
I mean, can you really get systems from like Dell for $300 that have monitor and OS and all that kind of stuff too still?
The Inspiron 560 desktop starting at $329 includes, brace yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, I have to. I hate the multiple layer menuing system.
Yeah.
Let's see. Okay, they're using for $329, you get an Intel Celeron 450 running at 2.2 gigahertz, no monitor, 2 gigabytes of DDR3, a 320 gigabyte hard drive, and X4500 graphics, and a 16x DVD RW drive. So I'm not finding that particularly impressive. Yeah, all of these entry-level systems.
Lower specs than what this $250 segment is on Newegg.
Yeah. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Of course, these have really nice Dell cases with colored front panels.
What good can happen when you can buy in bulk, I guess, right?
Yes, colored panels on your notebook. HDMI scaling? Question mark?
Yeah, let's do that.
Chris writes in, I've recently acquired an HP Mini 311-1037 NR netbook. It has the Atom N270, 2 gigabytes of RAM, the NVIDIA Ion GPU. It also has HDMI out that works at least with 720p video. My problem is that it scales down on my TV about 5 to 10%. I can see about half the Windows 7 standard taskbar. What do I need to fix so I can see the whole screen? I've played with about every setting in the NVIDIA control panel, including scaling different resolutions and changing the signal type. It's going to a 22-inch Sharp HD TV with VGA displays the whole screen perfectly. Please help. Welcome, Chris, to the hell of overscan. Depending on how old that Sharp monitor is, somewhere inside of the control panel for that monitor, you will hopefully have the ability to adjust overscan. So overscan is a concept that comes out of traditional analog broadcasting, and you created a signal basically to deal with the vagaries of CRT, traditional glass cathode ray tubes. They created an engineering spec where you created the broadcast company, whether it was ABC, NBC, your local crazy UHF channel, created a video signal that was physically larger than the monitor could display. So that when brand X televisions, who displayed more of the signal than they should have, wouldn't run out. Basically, to prevent the whole black rims from the edge of the monitor, basically running out of television before you ran out of monitor. For reasons no one has ever been able to explain to me or my buddy on HD Nation, the television genius Robert Heron, they decided to carry that over, especially into the first few generations of HD TVs, so that most HD TVs, especially the first 2 or 3 years of them, there was no way to shut off overscan. So I have a 37-inch. Oh, it's irritating. I have a 37-inch HD TV, which has HDMI inputs, no VGA inputs, but there is no way to turn off overscanning. So without some significant manipulation of the graphics output, which kind of works in some cases and usually doesn't in others, there was actually no way to get the taskbar to show up at the bottom of the monitor. So hopefully, Chris, you can dig through the menu and look for something around the probably overscan settings, and you want to turn off overscan. One of the nice things to do is there's software you can download to help you manipulate and set up your screen, which will help you adjust the overscan. Sometimes check to make sure also you've got the latest upgrade to the NVIDIA software, because I was pretty sure there was a tool inside of.
I'm pretty sure there is as well.
NVIDIA.
The last time I hooked an NVIDIA PC up to a TV, I definitely remember a specific tool that would allow you to adjust height, width. It would show up a little graphic with arrows pointing into the corners, and it would say, make sure you can see all 4 of the tips of the arrows, and hit OK, and it would manually adjust the resolution to something very specific to fit your display. Like Patrick said, make sure you have go to NVIDIA.com, make sure you have the latest drivers for it, and see if that helps with anything. Because you've either got to adjust the software and the PC for what it's outputting, or you've got to adjust something on the TV in terms of what it thinks it's receiving. It's complicated. There's some stuff on the NVIDIA forums, because apparently there were some issues specifically with the Ion chipsets, and
Yeah, you're going to have to probably go through standard monitor types, select digital flat panel 1920 by 1080 60 hertz to try to manually configure that. And if you can't find that in your NVIDIA software or a 1-to-1 pixel ratio or an overscan setting, also try downloading the Power Strip software and see if that helps you a little bit. But yeah. Shot. Good luck, sir.
Good luck. It should work. Like, I don't think there's a technical, like, it's not like a hardware problem, I don't think, that should be keeping this from working. You should be able to figure that out. I know you think you've gone through every option in the NVIDIA control panel. Maybe there's just one. It should even be like a tutorial, like a step-by-step, a wizard that you would walk through to adjust that. So look for something like that. Let's see. We've got an email from Usatab about a SODIMM adapter. He said, last week you had someone ask about turning their old parts into a multi-DVD burning computer. They had some spare SODIMMs, and I was wondering if the adapters are any good. I'm talking about something like these. And he included a link to an eBay Australia, I believe it's Australia, search, and you can search on eBay in US or whatever, and they have these interesting contraptions that I honestly had never seen before. And it's they sell like DDR1, DDR2. I don't see any for DDR3, but they are SODIMM adapters, and they are I see a DDR3 one. They're exactly what they sound like they are. It's a PCB in the shape of a standard desktop computer DIMM slot that has a SODIMM slot on it. And so you install your laptop memory onto this DIMM and install the DIMM into the computer, and it just basically reroutes the pin configuration out to the pins necessary on the motherboard. I got to tell you, the first response when I saw these pictures was, "Oh my dear Lord, don't do that." it just looks like a Frankenstein type technology.
That doesn't mean it won't work, though, which is the horrifying thing. But on one hand, I'm with you. Like, I'm just like, for $60 you can, for the $60 for the single board adapter, you can buy a significantly larger piece of RAM. That's my first reaction. Yeah. Because new RAM is cheap, unless you're talking about gigantic DDR3 sticks. But yeah, these are pretty awesome, or at least awesomely weird. I've never seen one of these for sale.
I've never seen it either. So you can get them for like I'm seeing them for like $30 on eBay, and they have dip switches on them too. And I'm trying to figure out what those dip switches say, because that scares me too. Adapter versus module. I don't really know what all that is. So for like $30, but even then, $30. If you've got to buy two of these, chances are you can get some DDR3 memory that's not going to scare you a little bit if you're using it. I don't know. I mean, I guess electrically, it's not a big deal, right? You're just rerouting these pins, so it should work. It should work, but there's a lot of people that have been buying bogus HDMI to component cables that some less than scrupulous people are selling online. So, it's a top-rated seller. But yeah, in this case, in the U.S., like the ones I'm seeing coming up are $75 to $140. And for $75 or $150, you can probably do a pretty significant memory upgrade for your system with the actual memory that's designed for it. Yeah.
So use tab. I would prefer you purchase it from someone who will absolutely positively give you a return if it doesn't work.
That's a good point.
But from an engineering standpoint, I see no reason why it wouldn't work. Because the voltages should be the same, right? Because it's using the same raw chips on the board, so.
Yeah, and voltages vary on DIMMs, so I'd imagine somewhere in that in the header information, the diagnostic information that comes from the SODIMM, same thing as a regular DIMM, that it will report to the motherboard, hey, send me this much voltage. I assume that would be pretty much the same. So try your own risk.
David has a classic problem. In the next week or two, I'm probably building something like the high-end system on PCPer.com and also upgrading a 4-year-old computer to more current hardware. I have little interest in overclocking. That's okay. I'm worried now with a second computer in our family room that things may get too loud. I'm using your recommended power supply for the new system and considering using the same power supply for the upgrade machine. Are stock CPU fans usually quiet enough? It depends. As far as case fans go, do you have or know of recommended brands that might be quieter than others, or in the very least brands to avoid? I don't want to pay much of a premium. Paying $5 for a case fan instead of $2 would be perfectly okay. One of the nice things about a lot of fans today, especially ones integrated into cases, is they have sort of little switches or potentiometers that allow you to adjust the voltage going to the fan. And by adjusting the voltage going to the fan, you adjust the speed to the fan so you can throttle it down. Fan designs have gotten a lot better. There's still a lot of cheap biscuit fans out there, which is unfortunate because they haven't changed the fan design in 30 years and they're basically ignoring basic aerodynamic principles. But the general principle is the bigger the fan and the slower the fan moves, you can still move a huge volume of air, but you do it with generating a lot less noise. Do you have any favorite fan brands for David, Ryan?
You know, a lot of companies nowadays are focusing on these really kind of interesting and unique designs. Thermaltake has some fans that have these weird kind of ridges in them that they claim increases airflow without increasing noise levels. Intermax has something just like that too. I don't think they exist anymore, but definitely avoid anything called a Vantech Tornado if you want quiet. Those were really high performing, really, 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 really loud. Other than that, I don't have anything. You know, if you go to like Newegg and you look at these fans, they're going to give you dBA ratings and they're going to give you CFM ratings. And in general, the higher the CFM, the higher the noise level, right? So try to get as many fans as you can running at a lower speed as opposed to just a couple of fans that have to run at a high speed.
Yeah, I would also take a strong look at an aftermarket CPU cooler. The CPU coolers coming from Intel or AMD are basically they're designed to meet the thermal envelope. They certainly attempt to make them quiet, but being quiet is not their number one goal. Producing this fan that attaches to the retail version of this chip for the least amount of money is their goal. So for not much money, for like 50 or $60, you can get some fantastic CPU heat sinks. And one I just bought, it's a little big. I was kind of shocked at how big it was when I pulled it out of the case, but it's Thermalright designed, and where did it go? It's not a Noctua. It's not a Cooler Master.
It's actually made by Thermalright, or?
It was designed by Thermalright.
Okay. I mean, they make a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but the air coolers are actually as good. Oh, it's the Thermalright True. What was I thinking? Thermalright Co-Gauge. It was the one. Thermalright Co-Gauge True Spirit 4 heat pipe Core i7 CPU cooler, $40. And it is, the performance is spectacular. The performance is hanging with coolers that cost 2, 3, 4 times as much. Better than the old water cooling system I had on my PC, and it's selling for $40. The other thing to do is when if the biscuit fans come integrated in the case with you buy them, is you can kind of do the touch the fan with your finger and touch each fan. And what I did with one of the projects I had is I had an existing system, and I knew the fan on the GPU was incredibly loud. So the first thing I did was I found the quietest, it's like a 30, at the time 30 dB was considered super quiet for a VGA card cooler, a GPU cooler. So that swapped in, and then I realized how loud the cooler was on the chipset on the motherboard. So that one was swapped next. And then by that point I could hear the CPU fan. So that one got upgraded next. But yeah, it's amazing how many, 10 years ago, having 6 biscuit fans that made your system sound like a jet taking off as soon as you launched the video game was kind of the mark of the true gamer. And now the mark of the true gamer is not actually being able to hear it. And a lot of the vendors, I think you're going to find most of the new fans are quiet. But FrozenCPU.com has a lot of good stuff. There's some pretty interesting websites if you want to get really crazy, like Quiet PC, the Quiet PC websites. Yeah, you can easily get really obsessed with this stuff too.
Oh yeah, if you go down that, a good site to check out that might have good reviews on fans focused on noise is SP SPCR, silentpcreview.com, spcr.com, I think is the URL for that. Good guys run that, and they know what they're talking about, and obviously based on the name, you can tell that their site is about silent PCs. It's actually silentpcreview.com. I don't know what spcr.com is, but give them
they've
a
got
shot.
some good stuff up there.
Yeah, they talk about fan controllers and all that other kind of stuff that will help you keep your systems quiet as well. Always important when you've got more than one computer in the same room. We got an email from Austin about green hard drives. He said he was watching episode 92, and you guys were talking about the green hard drives and how they made good drives for NAS or other storage. I remember reading or hearing somewhere that these drives are not good to use in a NAS or RAID configuration. Is this true? I'm going to be buying a Drobo FS soon on Patrick's recommendation, and was debating on the Western Digital 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte green drives for backup and streaming video over my gigabit network. Thanks, and keep up the great work. I don't know where you heard that the green drives weren't good for NAS or RAID configurations. They're not the fastest drives you can buy. If you're putting them in a Drobo, you're bottlenecked by your gigabit Ethernet speed anyway. Mm-hmm. Then I would heavily recommend, Western Digital green drives, whichever slower RPM brand drives you want to go with, because they're going to run quieter, they're going to run cooler, which is important. When you've got, how many does a Drobo FS hold? 4, 5? 5. So when you got 5 hard drives in a very, very small area, right? You want them to be as cool as they can be. They're just going to last longer and all that kind of stuff. So I still think the green hard drives make sense there. Do you have any?
There's a lot of what you hear is people on the internet talk a lot, some of them based on actual experience, but there's a lot of people who look at the specs on the green drives and think, that's ridiculous. You can buy an SSD drive, and if you're not going to do that, you can buy a 10,000, you can buy a Raptor. And if you're not going to buy a Raptor, then you should buy, look, the black drives are faster. Absolutely. There are faster hard drives out there. Like Ryan said, the green drives were engineered to be quiet and cool, which are ideal things when you're packing a bunch of drives into a small enclosure. These drives were essentially created for NAS boxes and large amounts of storage. Will they give you the ultimate performance out of that, especially if you're doing like, an 800, FireWire connection, which you're not doing on a Drobo FS? Right. No, but your bottleneck is elsewhere. I like that. Like I own a whole bunch of green drives. Do I want to run my operating system on them? No. Are they good for the NAS box because they're quiet and they're cool? Yes. And especially with the prices, the 2 terabyte drives are hovering around $100 right now, which is just awesome. I'm like, we're about to do a sort of a free NAS and Unraid, and there's a couple other software things. We got a lot of really interesting questions, so I'm doing some builds around that. But it's amazing how cheap you can put together several terabytes of quality storage that has parity protection built into it, or some variation on data protection built into it. So yeah, I think you're okay with the 2 terabyte green drives. If anything, if you're gonna listen to anybody's advice, find somebody who has actually tested a set of the green drives versus a set of some other drives in their machine, and look at what they use to benchmark. Because a lot of people hate the green drives because they're slower than the black drives. And it's like, well, take a look at how a NAS box works and the speeds of removing on a NAS box and the typical use for a NAS box, because if you back up your entire 2 terabyte desktop system to a NAS box every day, maybe you should connect the box, get a box that connects directly to your system through like USB 3.0 and not be worrying about a NAS box. And at that point, once you've got your USB 3.0 NAS directly connected to your machine that you're using for backup, then I say go for the black drives or stack a bunch of SSDs inside of it.
That's always fun.
The world's most expensive NAS box. Nevin has a question about flash and SSDs. Hi, guys. I absolutely love the show. Thank you, Nevin. It's entertaining and informative at the same time. That is our goal. I'm a novice rig builder and an avid Twit viewer. I'd like to know the difference between flash memory and an SSD, particularly given the fact that the new MacBook Air has chosen to include flash memory instead of an SSD. Is the difference based solely on SATA usage? Well, the SSDs are a form of flash drive, dude. Flash drives at their sort of the simplest way to define a flash drive is non-volatile memory, which means it is memory that stores zeros and ones, and when you take the electricity away from the hard drive, the zeros and ones stay there, so that when you apply electricity to the hard drive again, your data is still there. That's grossly oversimplified, but essentially, the same chips are found in Brian's going to laugh when I say this, but essentially you're finding the same memory chips inside of thumb drives as you are finding inside of SSDs. Are they the exact same?
That's true.
It's the latest and greatest and coolest ones are going to be showing up in SSD drives unless you're buying some really expensive flash drives. But essentially, it is the same technology. But SSD sounds much more sophisticated, and also because when you're selling drives to people who are building systems, when you say we're going to give you a flash drive, it's kind of a thumb drive, and people think, oh man, it's slow and I can put it in my pocket. But if you say SSD, it's like supersonic drive. It's a solid state drive, and for older people, solid state meant no tubes, which meant stuff didn't break and glow in the dark in the back of your television set. Essentially SSD is just a name for the same thing.
It is. I mean, you're right. Flash drive is basically associated with thumb drive, and they needed something that kind of indicated that this was like a hard drive, or it would go inside your computer. And a solid state drive kind of has that same indicator to it. But yeah, I mean, look, usually the flash memory used in an SSD is faster than the flash memory used in a thumb drive. That's starting to not be the case quite as much, because as we hopefully see more USB 3.0 accessories, the need for faster flash memory in all of your devices should increase. But yeah, it's essentially the same. It's just SSDs tend to have more cache, a higher end actual controller on them, and that kind of thing. So there's not a whole lot to the difference between those two technologies.
But the core of them are pretty much the same. Peter's looking for a notebook upgrade, which is always a cause for emotional distress. He says, because so often you can't make any meaningful upgrade. Says I have a 4-year-old Dell XPS M1710 gaming laptop, which I'm looking to improve. It's got a 945 chipset, Core 2 Duo T7600 processor running at 2.33 gigahertz, and he bought it just before the overclockable version was released. I am so sorry, Peter. 2 gigabytes of dual channel RAM, NVIDIA GeForce Go 7950 GTX, which was upgraded free under warranty when the original 7900 GTX barbecued its own memory. Also an experience of suck. And a Western Digital 500 gigabyte 5400 RPM hard disk drive, which replaced the original 90 gigabyte 7200 RPM drive when it started to make noise like a woodland creature, which is a horrible, horrible sound for a hard drive to make. Recently upgraded Windows 7 Pro 32-bit and dropped in the above-mentioned hard drive. Loving the added space and reduced risk of impending doom for my data, but it's noticeably slower than the original. With the system described, would I see a benefit from a solid-state drive? How about more RAM or even a processor upgrade? Not really sure how much I can do with the hardware. I just know that it can't afford to run much hotter than it does out of the box. Budget is open for discussion. Games include Left 4 Dead 2 and the like, plus good old IO Urban Terror. Oh boy.
It's kind of sad to hear somebody they went from a 90 gig hard drive, which is kind of hard to imagine 90 gig hard drives anymore. And they upgraded to a 500 gig 5400 RPM, and it was slower. They saw a slowdown. And it's kind of depressing. In a mobile and a notebook world, that kind of, that's much more common, right, than we expect in a desktop, but nobody likes to see that. I don't know. Do you think adding an SSD to his system would make any kind of noticeable difference, Patrick?
Well, it'll boot faster. It'll load levels on games faster. According to Intel and their latest studies, if you're seeing the shuddering effect that turns out to be your game loading all of the gigantic graphics for the other side of the level you're on, the SSD drive will help minimize that. Day-to-day operations, or the actual the majority of the gaming operations, an SSD drive isn't going to help. With Windows 7, I would absolutely go up to 4 gigabytes if that is an option on that system. If you can upgrade, I doubt you can upgrade the GeForce Go 7950.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Because that's part of the problem is even there was a small number of
he said he already got upgraded once, essentially. right?
Well,
when his 7900 GTX died, they replaced it with a 7950.
Right, but that also could be because they basically pulled out the dead motherboard that the chipset was integrated on and swapped in a new motherboard with an upgrade. I'm trying to see if there's a video card replacement path because I can't remember if the M17 was one of those rare notebooks that came out for a couple of years that actually promised an upgrade path for that.
And if they promised it, is it actually even possible?
Yeah, did anybody actually ever? Yeah, unless I'm mistaken, the XPS M1730 was the only Dell laptop with replaceable graphics cards. Somebody else is saying the XPS M1710 has a separate video card. Yeah,
I'm seeing that it does, but that it looks
can't replace it with an 8800.
The 7950 was the top level of that form factor. That be upgraded to. So that's kind of the problem with upgradable graphics on a notebook form factor is that the connection, the MXM specifications change fairly frequently as new GPUs come out and all that kind of stuff. And it's not nearly as standardized as it is on the consumer side, on the desktop side. So the idea of an upgradable notebook always sounded good, but it's never really come to fruition, I don't think.
No, and also because the volume of there's notebooks are such a small subset, and then the people who want to upgrade their GPU on your notebook is even a smaller subset. I got to say, the first thing I'd want to do, especially with Windows 7, is max out the amount of RAM on there. Max out the RAM. Make sure that you've given Windows 7 enough time to actually sort of optimize itself, because Windows 7 does some pretty slick things to take advantage of you kind of ordering the data and how it loads and how it's configured on there to sort of up the performance a little bit in noticeable ways over time. It optimizes itself. And I'd also be really curious. It would be really interesting to see if you've done any physical benchmarks or if it just felt slower, because sometimes upgrading the operating system can feel a little awkward on an older chipset. Man, true. Yeah, and that's one of the things that I find really frustrating about gaming notebooks is they're generally a lot of money up front, and you probably have, I always think if you have a gaming notebook and you can still game on it with decent resolution in 3 years, you've probably done really well. You've got a 4-year-old Dell and it's still playing some relatively new games. I'd call that a win. Throw some more memory at it. Wait till the SSD drives drop another notch. Throw that in and hold out for as long as you can. Right. Or take that $600 and apply it towards your $300-400 depending on what you spend on the RAM and the SSD, and apply it towards the next notebook.
Indeed. There you go.
Sorry, I just saw Dark Angel's question about compiling C code under Visual Studio 2010 or GCC and Linux. What is the important hardware to the process of compiling? Usually your CPU. Yep. And secondary.
That one's pretty simple and straight to the point, right? Processor speed, really important for compiling. If you're doing like massive compiles, an SSD might help with that if it's having to draw a lot of information. But usually when you're talking about compiling, all that code is in memory, and it's just how fast can it chug through it on the CPU side of things. So, I mean, I don't think it matters what operating system you're under for that, right? Windows 7 or Linux. The faster your clock speeds, the faster your processor. I don't know. I know compilers are more and more multi-threaded. It's been a long time since I've done a lot of coding. So multiple cores will be an advantage as well as just higher clock speeds in that regard. So that's the spec you need to look at if you're worried about your compiling performance for school or for work.
So yeah, I'm actually looking at parallel extensions being built into Net 4. I wonder if this is okay. This may be operating on the wrong operating system I'm looking at, because it was suggesting that the image was only working with a single core.
Yeah, I mean it's really the compiler technology is so complicated at this point. Now you have to compile for multi-threaded, and does that use I would assume compilers, if they're if you're making multi-threaded software with it, that they would be built to take advantage of multi-threaded processors themselves. But I know that, I mean, there's a lot of iterative single-threaded type workloads that have to be done while you're compiling. So,
yeah, I'm sorry, I was like, yeah, okay, so Visual Studio multi-threaded if you have the update for it. Not for Mac OS X, not for Linux users, but for Windows users. Should have multi-threaded computing, it looks like. Yeah, and if someone wants, if there's someone in there who's a rabid coder who's familiar with C# coding under Visual Studio 2010 and its friendliness to threaded or multiple threaded on a CPU, please email us twich at twit.tv is the email for that one. And of course, we want to hear your questions. You got a hardware question, specifically a computer hardware question, please email Ryan and I at twich, TWICH at twit.tv. And I think with the contemplation of compiling C# under Visual Studio, we're going to wrap this episode of the show. Ryan, where can people find the most outstanding work at PCPer.com?
That is where you can find it. PC Perspective is the site. PCPer.com is where we do hardware reviews, notebook reviews. You know, if you want to learn more about the architecture of the Radeon 6800 series cards we discussed today, you can get those details there. You were talking about the performance of green hard drives versus black series hard drives. We have reviews on that as well. Go to our storage section. You'll see a bunch of articles on that. Pretty much if it's PC hardware, sometimes gadget related, we try to cover it. PCPer.com is that email address. Now, I know you have quite a few places we can find you. We've got HD Nation, which is a great show on kind of all things high-definition video, TVs, Blu-ray players, that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, home theater technology and high-definition content. Robert Heron and I, we're talking about, we're going to BlueCon next week, which is sort of the gathering of BlueCon developers in the studios down in Beverly Hills. We usually stand out like sore, poorly dressed thumbs, but we've seen some really interesting technology talked about in there, and actually we've got both on Techzilla, which is a show I host with Veronica Belmont, which is more sort of a general purpose technology show from cell phone to operating systems to building hardware. We've got some pretty good stuff this week, right? Google TV came out, so we got the Logitech review in, and well, go to Techzilla.tv or Techzilla.com or hdnation.tv and please check them out. I'd appreciate that one. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
And that's it for This Week in Computer Hardware. We'll see you next week.